Chapter 9. Beirut to Athens. Salahadin and Fuad got back home before 10 o'clock. Layla was pleased to see them. She started to make some food, but Salahadin was in a hurry. "Can you phone Beirut airport?" he asked Fuad. "Find out the time of the first plane to Athens. I want to get there as soon as possible." Fuad phoned the airport. Layla brought in some coffee and they sat down. Salahadin told her about Borkman's death. He spoke about the black cat. "But what is the black cat?" asked Layla. Salahadin told her about the pharaoh Ankuten and about the tomb in the valley of Zar. "I know now that Pearson found the tomb," said Salahadin. "He found the cat in the tomb and brought it to Cairo. Pearson told Borkman about the cat, but Borkman was a member of the Baalbek gang. Pearson didn't know that. Borkman murdered Pearson and took the cat." "And where is the cat now?" asked Layla. "Borkman had a plan," replied Salahadin. "He was not taking the cat to Beirut. He gave the cat to another man on the docks at Alexandria. This other man is called Peterson. Peterson has taken the black cat with him to Athens." While Salahadin was talking, he was making some notes in his book. The black cat. Pearson found black cat, took it to Cairo, told Borkman, Pearson murdered by Borkman. Borkman took black cat to Alexandria, gave it to Peterson, came to Beirut, killed en road to Baalbek. The Red Hand gang heard about black cat, tried to stop Borkman, killed en road to Baalbek. Yusuf, in cafe at Baalbek. Leader of Baalbek gang? Peterson has black cat. He's on a boat going to Athens. Boat is called the Syria. Fuad came back from the telephone. "There's a plane in 4 hours' time," he said. "It leaves Beirut at 1 o'clock in the morning and arrives in Athens at 5. "How long does the boat take from Alexandria to Athens?" asked Salahadin. "Almost 2 days," replied Layla. "I once went by boat on a holiday to Athens." "The Syria left Alexandria on Monday evening," said Salahadin. "It's Tuesday today. It won't arrive in Athens until tomorrow. I'll be in Athens before the boat." "We must leave soon," said Fuad. "It's a long way to the airport." Salahadin said goodbye to Layla and drove off with Fuad. They arrived at the airport just after midnight. It was already Wednesday, but Salahadin was only a few hours away from Athens by air. Salahadin thanked Fuad. "Take care," said Fuad. 6 people have already died because of this black cat. Send us a telegram from Athens." "I'll send you a telegram from Athens tomorrow," said Salahadin. Then he smiled. "I mean today. It's Wednesday already. You go to the police in the morning. Tell them about Yusuf's cafe." Salahadin said goodbye to Fuad and went to catch the plane for Athens. Chapter 10. Salahadin finds Peterson. Salahadin's plane flew over Athens early in the morning. From the aeroplane he looked down on the ruins of the Acropolis. They looked wonderful in the early morning sunlight. But Salahadin was not a tourist. He was a detective, and he had to find Peterson. Salahadin took a taxi from the airport to Piraeus, the seaport of Athens. He got out of the taxi at Piraeus and went to an office at the dock gate. "What time does the Syria arrive from Alexandria?" he asked. "At midday," was the reply, "and it leaves again for Venice at 4 o'clock. It was only 6 o'clock in the morning. Salahadin had a long time to wait. But Piraeus is full of small cafes and restaurants. Saladin passed the time drinking coffee and sleeping. At 11 o'clock, Saladin walked back to the docks. He tried to walk through the gate, but a policeman stopped him. "You can't go through the gate without a ticket," said the policeman. Saladin had an idea. The man in the office had said that the Syria was going to Venice. Saladin went back to the office and bought a first-class ticket to Venice. When he got into the docks, the Syria had not yet arrived. Saladin sat down on a box and waited. "Peterson is not an Egyptian name," thought Saladin. "It's another Swedish name, like Borkman. Perhaps Peterson is Swedish also. I'll look for a man with fair hair. He'll be carrying a box." The Syria was half an hour late. It arrived in the docks at 12:30. Saladin watched the people getting off the boat. They were all Egyptian. There were some men with their wives and children, and many students. There was no one who looked Swedish. At that moment, someone appeared on the top deck of the Syria. He was a tall man with fair hair. "That's Peterson," thought Saladin. "So, he's decided to stay on the boat. Perhaps he's going to Venice. I'll get on the boat and go to Venice too." But Saladin was careful. Perhaps it was a trick, and Peterson was going to get off the boat at the last moment. Saladin waited, but no one else got off. At 5 o'clock, Saladin got on the boat. The gangway was taken down, and the Syria was ready to leave. Saladin went to the ticket office on the boat and showed his ticket to the officer. "I've just got on the boat," said Saladin. "Can I have a cabin, please?" "You're travelling first class, sir," the officer said. "You can go into cabin 22. It's just onto the top deck." The officer turned to get the key for cabin 22. "Wait a moment, sir," said the officer. "I'm sorry. I've made a mistake. Cabin 22 isn't empty. Mr. Peterson's in cabin 22. He's decided to go on to Venice. But cabin 23 is empty. You can go there." Saladin took the key from the officer, went to cabin 23, and sat down. He had found Peterson. Chapter 11. Saladin finds the black cat. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door of Saladin's cabin. It was the steward. "Do you want to eat in the dining room or in your cabin, sir?" asked the steward. "Where do people usually eat?" asked Saladin. "In the dining room," replied the steward. "But you can have your dinner in your cabin if you want." "That's an idea," said Saladin. "I'll eat here." "I'll bring you dinner at 8 o'clock then," said the steward, and walked down the corridor. Saladin watched the steward carefully. The steward walked to a small room under the stairs. Saladin took out his notebook and drew a plan of the corridor and the cabins. After a few moments, the steward came out of his room and walked down the corridor. Saladin waited for 5 minutes. Everything was quiet in the corridor. Saladin left his cabin and walked quietly to the steward's room under the stairs. The steward had not locked the door. Saladin opened it carefully and looked in. The room was small, with brushes and cleaning things in it. There were some hooks on the wall. A key hung from every hook, and there was a number above each one. Saladin took the key of cabin 22 and went to the door. Suddenly he heard a noise. Peterson had come back. He was standing at the door of his cabin. Saladin waited in the steward's room. Peterson went into his cabin and closed the door. Saladin quietly went back to his own cabin, sat down and listened. There was the noise of music. Peterson had turned on a radio. Then there was the noise of running water. Peterson was having a shower. Saladin had a shower too, got dressed, and waited. A few minutes later there was a knock at his door. The steward had brought Saladin's dinner. At the same time, Peterson came out of his cabin. He locked the door and walked down the corridor. Peterson was going to the dining room. The steward went away, and Saladin was left alone. He looked out into the corridor. Everything was quiet. Saladin left his cabin and crossed the corridor. He put the key in the lock of cabin 22 and quietly opened the door. Then he went into the cabin and shut the door carefully behind him. Saladin looked round the cabin. There was a case on top of the cupboard and some clothes on the bed. But he did not see a box. He looked inside the shower room. It was empty. The black cat must be here, thought Saladin. Where has he hidden it? Then he had an idea. The shower room was very high. Saladin looked up. There was a box placed above the shower. Saladin lifted the box down on the bed and started to open it. But something had gone wrong. There was a noise, and the door of cabin 22 suddenly opened. There was a man in the doorway. It was Peterson, and he had a gun in his hand. The gun was pointing at Saladin. Chapter 12. Death on the Syria. "Don't move," said Peterson. Peterson came into the cabin and shut the door. Saladin stood still in front of the bed. "Who are you?" asked Peterson. "And what are you doing in my cabin?" Saladin thought quickly. He had to say something. "Borkman sent me," he said. "I have a message for you." "You're telling lies," said Peterson. "There's something on the bed. Stand back." Saladin moved back, and Peterson saw the open box. "So, you found the black cat," said Peterson. "You're a member of the Red Hand gang." Peterson opened the door and looked out into the corridor. It was empty. "Put your hands behind your back and come out of the cabin," said Peterson. "Then walk slowly up the stairs to the top deck." Saladin came out of the cabin, and Peterson followed him. Saladin walked slowly up the stairs. When they reached the top deck, Peterson spoke again. "Walk over to the rail." There was a rail round the side of the ship. Over the rail was the sea. The Syria had now passed through the Corinth Canal, and the ship was rolling from side to side. Saladin walked slowly forward towards the funnel. "Stop," said Peterson. "Turn round." Saladin turned and looked at Peterson. "Now tell me the truth," said Peterson. "Who are you?" Saladin decided to tell some truth and some lies. "Borkman's dead," said Saladin, "and Yusuf is caught. The Baalbek gang is finished. The police are waiting for you at Venice." "I don't believe you," said Peterson. "How do you know this? Who are you?" "I'm an inspector in the Egyptian police," replied Saladin. "I followed you from Beirut. The Italian police are waiting for you at Venice." "You're telling lies again," said Peterson. "Why didn't you bring the police onto the boat at Athens?" Saladin did not reply, and Peterson started to laugh. "You didn't tell anyone at Athens," he said. "There's no one waiting for this boat at Venice." Now I'm going to shoot you. I'll throw your body into the sea, and no one will ever know." Suddenly Peterson lifted his gun. At the same moment a large wave shook the side of the ship. Peterson was thrown against the rail, and the gun fell onto the deck. For a second both men looked at the gun, then at each other. The wind pressed hard against them. Neither of them moved forward. Peterson was the first to move. He tried to pick up the gun, and Salah ad-Din ran straight at him. He held Peterson round the neck and pushed him over the rail. Peterson fell backwards over the rail and disappeared into the angry sea below. There was a scream, then there was silence. Salah ad-Din walked slowly away from the rail and sat down on the deck. No one came. Everyone was busy eating dinner. No one had heard the noise.